the first civilization of Europe, and the day it died. So often when we think about the birth of European civilization, our minds leap straight to Athens, or Rome, marble columns, philosophers, legions marching beneath banners. But tonight, we are going somewhere older, deeper, and far more mysterious. Because the story of Europe's first great civilization does not begin on the mainland at all. It begins offshore, on a rugged island rising from the blue heart of the Mediterranean, an island called Crete. Crete is a spine of mountains and valleys surrounded by restless sea. It sits exactly where worlds collide, Africa to the south, the Near East to the east, Europe to the north. For thousands of years, ships passed its shores, carrying copper, tin, gold, ideas, and stories. And here, during the Bronze Age, something extraordinary happened. A civilization unlike any other emerged, a culture that built vast palaces without walls, filled them with color and life, worshipped goddesses instead of war gods, and ruled the seas without conquering the land. And then they vanished. So completely, in fact, that history forgot them. Their language fell silent, their cities crumbled, their name disappeared. All that survived was a dark story, whispered for centuries, a myth of a monster, a maze, and a terrible king. The legend of the Minotaur. Tonight, we peel back the layers of myth and ash and stone. We follow the archaeologists who uncovered painted palaces beneath olive groves. We meet enigmatic priestesses, leaping bulls, and goddesses holding snakes. And we investigate a volcano so powerful it may have changed the course of European history forever. But first, take a breath. Let the modern world loosen its grip. Wherever you are tonight, whatever hour you're listening, imagine the sea breeze, the scent of salt and earth, and a world before written history. Because before history is written, it is remembered as story. And for Crete, the memory survived as a nightmare. The myth begins with pride. It was said that long ago, a powerful king named Minos ruled Crete from a great palace at Knossos. He claimed his authority came directly from the gods. To prove it, he prayed to Poseidon, lord of the sea, asking for a sign that all could see. And Poseidon answered. From the waves rose a magnificent white bull, flawless, sacred, radiant with divine power. Minos was supposed to sacrifice it immediately, returning the gift to the god who sent it. But when Minos saw the bull, something human crept in. Greed. The animal was too beautiful, too perfect, so he kept it and sacrificed a lesser bull instead. It was a small act, but when you insult a god, there are consequences. Poseidon did not strike Minos down. He chose something far worse. He cursed the king's wife, Queen Pasiphae, filling her with an uncontrollable, unnatural desire for the sacred bull. Consumed by madness and shame, the queen turned to the greatest inventor of the age, Daedalus. She commanded him to build a hollow wooden cow so she could hide inside it and deceive the animal. From that blasphemous union came a horror, a child born with the body of a man and the head of a bull. They named him Asterion. History would remember him as the Minotaur. Terrified and disgusted by the living symbol of his own sin, Minos ordered Daedalus to build a prison so perfect that escape would be impossible. And so Daedalus created the labyrinth, a twisting maze of corridors, stairways, dead ends, and darkness. Anyone who entered would be lost forever, until the Minotaur found them. But the myth does not end on Crete. It spreads across the sea to Athens. Minos, seeking revenge for the death of his son, waged war on the city and crushed it. As punishment, Athens was forced to send 7 young men and 7 young women every year, 14 innocent lives, shipped across the sea and thrown into the labyrinth to be devoured, a living tribute to fear. Year after year the ships sailed. Year after year the monster fed, until a hero rose. Theseus, son of the Athenian king, volunteered to go. He swore he would end the curse forever. When he arrived at Knossos, he was brought before Minos, and there the king's daughter Ariadne saw him, and she fell in love. Unable to watch him die, she secretly gave Theseus 2 gifts, a sword and a simple ball of thread. He tied the thread to the entrance of the labyrinth and unwound it as he descended into the darkness. At the center, he faced the Minotaur, fought it, and killed it. Guided by the thread, he escaped the maze and fled Crete, breaking Minos' power forever. That was the story. For 3,000 years, that was all anyone knew. A monster, a maze, no civilization, no artists, no sailors, no palaces filled with light. Just myth, and myths, as powerful as they are, tend to bury the truth. But the truth was still there, sleeping beneath the soil. As the 19th century drew to a close, a new kind of hero arrived, not with a sword, but with a spade. His name was Sir Arthur Evans. Evans was wealthy, confident, stubborn, and absolutely obsessed with one thing: a lost language. While traveling through Greek markets, he had seen small white seal stones carved with strange symbols. The locals called them milk stones and wore them as charms. Evans saw something else entirely. He believed they were fragments of Europe's oldest writing system, older than Greek, older than Homer. Following these clues, Evans arrived on Crete in the 1890s. The island was poor, rugged, and only recently freed from Ottoman rule. He traveled village to village, buying seal stones, tracing their origins like a detective following fingerprints. Again and again, the trail led to a low hill covered in olive trees near Heraklion. The locals called it Kephala. Others suspected this hill before. Even Heinrich Schliemann, the man who found Troy, believed it hid Knossos. But politics and money stopped him. Evans had neither problem. He bought the land outright, every stone, every olive tree, every secret beneath it. In March of 1900, he began to dig. For days there was nothing but dust and disappointment, thick walls but no story. Then suddenly, color. A worker struck something soft, carefully brushed away, and there it was, painted plaster. A face. Life-sized, youthful, elegant. A young man holding a ritual cup, black hair flowing, skin alive with movement. The cupbearer. This was not primitive art. This was mastery. Soon after, they uncovered a sunken chamber, benches, and then a throne, carved from a single block of stone. Behind it, painted walls, palm trees, and flanking the seat, griffins, mythical guardians staring outward. Evans did not hesitate. This, he declared, is the throne room of King Minos. And then came the symbol. Everywhere, carved into stone, painted on walls, the double-headed axe, the labrys. Evans made the connection instantly. Labrys, labyrinth. The palace of the double axe. The maze was real, and it was architecture. Evans had come looking for writing. He found a lost world. And this was only the beginning. What Arthur Evans and his team uncovered at Knossos was not a single building. It was not even a palace in the way we normally imagine one. As the trenches widened and the earth was peeled back layer by layer, something far more astonishing emerged. Evans realized he wasn't excavating a royal residence. He was excavating an entire world. The site spread outward across nearly 6 acres. Walls appeared in every direction. Corridors twisted and turned. Staircases descended, then rose again. Rooms opened into courtyards, which led into halls, which dissolved into workshops, shrines, and storage chambers. There was no clear beginning, no obvious end, and standing within it, even with modern maps and labels, it was easy to feel disoriented, confused, almost lost. So yes, the labyrinth was real, but it was never built to imprison a monster. At the heart of the complex lay a vast rectangular central court, paved in stone and open to the sky. This was the beating heart of the Minoan world, a place of gathering, ceremony, movement. You can almost hear it if you pause long enough, the murmur of crowds, the rhythmic stamping of feet, the echo of drums. This was where festivals unfolded, where priestesses processed in flowing skirts, and where young athletes prepared themselves for rituals that balanced life and death. From this central court, the palace radiated outward like a living organism. Over 1,000 rooms unfolded in a brilliantly planned chaos. The structure cascaded down the slope of the Kephala hill, rising in places to 4, even 5 stories high. Terraces stacked upon terraces, balconies overlooking courtyards, verandas catching the sea breeze, and connecting it all. Staircases, grand staircases, narrow staircases. Staircases that bent light and shadow in ways that felt almost intentional, theatrical, alive. One of the most remarkable features Evans uncovered was the light well. This was a Minoan innovation, an open vertical shaft that channeled sunlight and fresh air deep into the core of the building. Even the lowest rooms were not dark or suffocating. They breathed, they glowed. The palace was not meant to dominate nature, but to flow with it. This architectural philosophy is the key to understanding who the Minoans really were. Because here is the most shocking detail of all. There were no walls, no battlements, no towers, no fortified gates, no massive stone ramparts to keep enemies out. In an age where every great power, from the Hittites to the Egyptians to the future Mycenaeans, surrounded their wealth with stone and fear, the Minoans did the opposite. Their palaces were open, Knossos was not a fortress looming over its people. It blended into the surrounding town. The Great West Court functioned like a public square. Processional roads led directly into the palace complex. Entrances invited movement, not defense. This was not an oversight. This was a statement. For centuries, the island of Crete appears to have known internal peace. No evidence of civil war, no burned layers from invasion, no mass graves. Archaeologists began to speak of a pax Minoica, a Minoan peace, a long period of stability that allowed art, religion, and innovation to flourish. But peace like this requires protection. And that protection did not come from stone. It came from the SEA. The Minoans were the first great naval power in European history, a true thalassocracy, ruled by the sea. Their real walls were wooden, the hulls of their ships. Their defense was movement, speed, reach. We see this power frozen in color on the nearby island of Thera, where the famous flotilla fresco shows elegant ships sailing between island towns. These vessels were sleek, crescent-shaped, powered by both sail and oars. They were fast, maneuverable, deadly if they needed to be, but more importantly, they controlled trade. From Crete, Minoan ships reached Egypt, Anatolia, Cyprus, and the Levant. They carried olive oil, wine, fine textiles, and exquisite pottery. In return, they brought back copper and tin, the lifeblood of the Bronze Age, along with gold, ivory, and precious stones. The sea lanes belonged to them. Why build walls when no enemy could reach your shore? This naval supremacy allowed the Minoans to pour their wealth not into fortifications, but into beauty. And nowhere is that beauty more alive than in their art. The walls of Knossos did not tell stories of conquest. They did not glorify kings trampling enemies beneath their feet. Instead, they bloomed. The Minoans were masters of the fresco, a technique so demanding it leaves no room for hesitation. Pigment had to be applied to wet plaster before it dried. No corrections, no second chances. Every brushstroke had to be confident, alive. And alive they are. One of the first frescoes Evans uncovered was the procession fresco. Youths with long, flowing black hair move gracefully across a deep red background. They wear elaborately patterned kilts. Their bodies lean forward with purpose, carrying ritual vessels toward some unseen sacred destination. Leading them is the cupbearer, poised, calm, dignified. It feels ceremonial, ordered, human. In the more private spaces, the art becomes playful, even joyful. In what Evans called the Queen's Megaron, the walls erupt into motion. Blue dolphins leap through a stylized sea, fish scatter, sea urchins cling to rocks. There is no horizon, no gravity, just movement and delight. This is not propaganda. This is love for the sea that fed them, protected them, defined them. And then there is her, fragment of a face, a woman with curling hair, heavily outlined eyes, and red lips pulled into a knowing smile. Evans called her La Parisienne because she looked shockingly modern, confident, intelligent, unafraid to meet your gaze. Goddess, priestess, noblewoman, we don't know. But through her eyes, the Minoans still watch us. Perhaps the most famous image of all is the bull leaping fresco. A massive bull explodes across the frame, legs extended in a flying gallop. Three slender figures interact with it in perfect choreography. One grasps the horns, another vaults over the bull's back in a breathtaking arc. The third waits to catch the leaper as they land. The colors follow Minoan convention, dark skin for male, pale for female, but the movement transcends gender. It is dangerous, sacred, beautiful. Was this a real ritual? A symbolic one? Scholars still argue. But one thing is clear, the bull was sacred. Its image appears everywhere, on pottery, on seals, on ceremonial drinking vessels, and most striking of all, on rooftops. The horns of consecration. Massive stylized bull horns carved from stone marking spaces as holy. For the Minoans, the bull was raw natural power, life, death, fertility, chaos. And unlike later cultures that sought to dominate nature, the Minoans chose to dance with it. This philosophy extends even into their everyday objects. Their pottery is impossibly thin, painted with swirling abstract designs in the early period, then later with stunning realism. The octopus flask from Pallaicastro is a masterpiece. Tentacles wrap around the vessel as if alive. The form and the image become one. You are not just holding a pot, you are holding the CA. Their seal stones, tiny gemstones carved with microscopic precision, show priestesses in ecstasy, ships at full sail, animals mid-motion. These were administrative tools, but also art. Beauty was not reserved for elites. It was woven into daily life. This was a civilization that lived inside art. For all its color, there is a silence at the center of the Minoan world. Their writing remains undeciphered. Arthur Evans found hundreds of clay tablets baked hard by fire. He named the scripts Linear A and Linear B. Linear B would one day be read. Linear A, the true voice of the Minoans, remains mute. We cannot read their prayers, their myths, their names for themselves. So we are left to listen with our eyes. And what the art tells us is astonishing. This was a society without glorified war, without obsession with kings, without walls, a culture that trusted the sea, celebrated nature, elevated women in ritual life, and believed harmony, not conquest, was power. But harmony is fragile, and far to the north, the earth was beginning to stir. To truly understand the Minoans, to get even close to the core of who they were, we have to step away from palaces and ships for a moment. We have to step into something quieter, something far more elusive, their beliefs. So how did the Minoans do it? Maybe they approached from the side. Maybe the bull was trained. Maybe younger animals were used. Or maybe the fresco compresses time, showing multiple moments at once rather than a single instant. The truth may never be known. But what is clear is that bull leaping was a high-stakes ritual, a sacred dance with death. One mistake meant being trampled, gored, or killed, and yet they did it anyway. Why? Because the Minoans did not seek to dominate nature. They sought to engage with it, to meet its most dangerous forces with grace, timing, and skill. This was not brute strength, this was balance. And here, in this ritual, we finally see the historical seed of the Minotaur myth. Later Greeks, encountering these vast palaces, these bull symbols, and hearing echoes of dangerous rituals performed in maze-like courts, transformed memory into monster. What was once a sacred dance became a story of sacrifice. What was once a palace became a prison. What was once a bull ritual became a bullman devouring children. Myth was born from misunderstanding, but myth preserves memory. As we step back and look at the Minoan world as a whole, a pattern emerges. This was a civilization rooted in nature, guided by female divinity, balanced by male force, confident enough to live without walls, wealthy enough to fill life with art, and skilled enough to rule the sea without ruling through fear. It was a world built on harmony, which makes what comes next all the more tragic. Because harmony depends on balance, and balance can be shattered in an instant. Far to the north of Crete, on an island the Minoans knew well, the earth was rumbling, quietly, patiently. Beneath the beauty of white cliffs and blue water, pressure was building. A volcano was waking up. And when it finally erupted, it would change everything. In the final golden years of the Minoan world, everything must have felt secure, even eternal. The palaces still pulsed with life, frescoes still bloomed with color, ships still slipped across the Aegean like blades through water. From Egypt to the Near East, Minoan goods moved through ports and palaces. Their island empire had no walls, no rival at sea, and no memory of invasion. It was a civilization built on confidence, and confidence can be blinding. Because 70 miles to the north, beyond the curve of the horizon, something ancient was stirring. The island of Thera, today called Santorini, was one of the jewels of the Minoan trading network. Its port city, Akrotiri, was rich, cosmopolitan, and unmistakably Minoan in character. Multi-storied houses lined paved streets, walls glowed with frescoes, drainage systems carried water cleanly away. Merchants moved goods through storerooms stacked high with jars of oil and wine. It was prosperity made visible. But Thera was also a volcano. At first the warnings would have been subtle, a tremor here, another there, cups rattling on shelves, walls cracking, then stronger quakes, buildings shuddering, fear spreading. Archaeology gives us a chilling detail. At Akrotiri, beds were overturned, pots smashed, but no human bodies were found, not one. Which means the people fled. They listened to the earth, they gathered what they could carry, and they escaped. They survived the warning. They did not survive what came next. When the eruption finally began, it was not a mountain exploding. It was the Iceland tearing itself apart. With a roar that would have echoed across the Bronze Age world, the volcano unleashed one of the most powerful eruptions in human history, many times stronger than Krakatoa. A column of ash, pumice, and superheated gas blasted more than 20 miles into the sky. The sun disappeared. Day became twilight. Twilight became an endless gray dusk. Across the Aegean, people looked up in terror as the sky turned yellow, then black. At Akrotiri, death came gently and mercilessly. Ash rained down, burying the city in meters of pumice. Buildings were sealed, frescoes frozen, streets entombed, a Bronze Age Pompeii preserved in silence. But the true devastation had not yet arrived. The volcano's heart collapsed. The center of Thera fell into the sea, creating the vast crescent-shaped caldera we see today. And that collapse displaced an unimaginable volume of water. The sea rose, then raced outward. Not one wave, but a series of colossal walls of water, moving faster than any ship. On the northern coast of Crete, the signs would have been terrifying. The sky already dark, a deep, thunderous roar rolling across the sea. Then the water pulled back, farther than any tide had ever gone, exposing the seabed in a sudden, unnatural silence. And then impact. The waves smashed into unfortified harbors. Villas, coastal towns, ports that had once bustled with trade, were obliterated in minutes. Ships, the wooden walls of the Minoan Empire, were torn from their moorings and splintered like toys, entire fleets destroyed where they stood. When the sea finally withdrew, nothing was the same. For months, maybe years, a volcanic winter followed. Ash drifted across eastern Crete like poisonous snow. Fields were choked, crops failed, water sources were contaminated, livestock died. The sun returned only as a pale, sickly disk behind a gray veil. The Minoans had not been defeated by an enemy. They had been struck by the planet itself. For a long time, historians believed this was the end, a single apocalyptic blow that erased the Minoans overnight. It is a powerful story, but it is wrong. Archaeology tells us something far more unsettling. The eruption did not kill the Minoan civilization instantly. It wounded it. At coastal sites like Palikastro, excavators found thick layers of ash and debris swept far inland, clear evidence of tsunami destruction. But at Knossos, deep inland, there is no ash layer from the eruption, no collapsed palace, no mass destruction. The heart of Minoan power survived. Life continued, but it continued in a changed world. The first and most devastating loss was the sea. With northern harbors destroyed and fleets shattered, Minoan thalassocracy collapsed. Trade routes broke. The steady flow of copper and tin slowed or stopped. Without bronze, tools failed, weapons dwindled, the economic engine seized. The second wound was psychological, spiritual. For a people whose religion celebrated harmony with nature, the eruption was incomprehensible. The sky darkened. The sea rose in fury. The earth tore itself open. What did it mean? Had the gods turned away? Had the balance been broken? Faith, once a source of strength, may have become a source of fear. Authority weakened, and where power weakens, others move in. Across the sea, on the Greek mainland, a very different civilization was rising. The Mycenaeans. They were warriors, builders of fortresses, masters of siege and blade. Their world was one of paranoia and defense, of massive stone walls and kings buried with weapons. For centuries, the Minoans had overshadowed them. Now, the balance shifted. As Minoan influence faltered, Mycenaean ships sailed farther, traded more, raided more, and eventually they crossed the sea not as guests, but as rulers. Knossos did not fall in flames immediately. Instead, it was taken over. Administrators arrived, bureaucrats, warriors. The palace continued to function, but now under new masters. And here, in the ashes of the old world, we find one of the most important clues in all of European history. Among the clay tablets preserved by fire, scholars noticed something strange. This script, once undecipherable, was not Minoan at all. When Michael Ventris finally cracked the code in the 1950s, the truth emerged with stunning clarity. Linear B was Greek. The final rulers of Knossos were Mycenaeans. The palace had become a Greek administrative center. The Minoans were no longer masters of their own world. Yet even in conquest, the Mycenaeans were students. They absorbed Minoan art, fresco techniques, symbols, religious imagery. They painted their own walls, but replaced dolphins with warriors, ceremonies with battles. The Vafias cups capture this perfectly. One shows bulls captured violently in chaos. The other shows bulls lured calmly into nets. Two worlds, one object. But absorption is not preservation. Around 1375 BC, the end came. A massive fire swept through Knossos, hotter, more complete than anything before. Staircases collapsed, columns burned, frescoes shattered. The palace, over 500 years old, was destroyed forever. Why? No one knows. It may have been rebellion, a final uprising of native Minoans against foreign rule. Or it may have been Mycenaean politics, a rival Greek king eliminating a competing power center. Whatever the cause, the result was final. The palace was never rebuilt. People lingered in the ruins, small settlements survived, but the centralized power, the wealth, the art-filled world without walls, was gone. In a cruel twist of fate, the very fire that ended Knossos preserved its final records, baking the linear B tablets hard and immortalizing the last administrators of a dying world. Crete faded into the background, but the Minoans did not vanish completely. They became memory, and that memory lived on, distorted, reshaped, retold as myth. Which brings us back to the labyrinth, back to Minos, back to the monster, because in the end, the Minoans were not erased. They were remembered imperfectly, and their legacy would echo through Greek myth, Western art, and the foundations of European civilization itself. When the fires at Knossos finally died down, something far more enduring than ash was left behind. The Minoan world, its palaces, its rituals, its goddess-centered faith, its rule of the sea, was finished as a living system. But civilizations do not simply disappear. They echo, they fracture, they survive in strange, distorted forms. And for the Minoans, survival came not through power, but through memory.